This video will look at some games from a chess master called George Koltanowski. Koltanowski was an international master who became famous for playing blindfold chess and breaking the world blindfold record in 1937. He also popularized the Deutz gambit, which is an audacious gambit that white can play in the Italian game. His success with the gambit was so well known that many people now call the gambit the Koltanowski gambit. Koltanowski was born in 1903 in Belgium to Polish Jewish parents. Most of his family were murdered by the Nazis in World War II, but Koltanowski survived because he was on a chess tour in South America when the war broke out. In the end, he became an American citizen and continued to play and promote chess for the rest of his life. He lived right up until the year 2000, when he died at the age of 96. Let's now look at the Koltanowski gambit. It usually arises from the bishop's opening, where we reach the giuoco piano game. In this position, pawn c3 is the most popular move, but Koltanowski instead preferred to always castle short. The vast majority of black players will play knight f6, and from here most white players protect their e4 pawn with the move pawn d3. However, the Koltanowski gambit, aka Deutz gambit, has the surprising move pawn d4. From here, white can take this marauding pawn with one of three pieces: with their pawn, with their knight, or with their bishop. Believe it or not, all three moves give good chances for white. Before we look at the games of Koltanowski, let's quickly look at why knight takes pawn is problematic. White will first play knight takes e5, attacking the f7 square. Next, black basically has to castle, and then the move bishop e3 leaves the d4 knight in a very awkward position. In fact, the engine actually rates this position at plus 1.7 for white. Now let's look at some games which Koltanowski played with this gambit. The amazing thing about the following 5 games is that he was blindfolded every time and playing a huge number of players at the same time. Imagine the amount of information he needed to store in his head. In Game 1, we see the opponent retake with their pawn. This goes into the Max Lang attack, which is deadly if the black player has not studied it well. Here, the opponent, named Henderson, does not know the correct continuation. After the move pawn e5, attacking black's knight, black should actually leave the knight and instead counterattack with pawn d5. However, Henderson retreated the knight and soon paid the price, as we can see in the next few moves. Game 2 also involves a capture by the pawn in the Max Lang attack. This time, the opponent, Burnett, correctly plays the move pawn d5 to counterattack. This move results in an exciting situation with 2 minor piece captures, and then a rook check by Koltanowski. Black blocks the check with their bishop, so Koltanowski played g5. Burnett then played queen d5, which defends the bishop and may allow for a long castle, but it is here that Koltanowski plays a brilliant move. Please pause the video and find the move. The move is knight c3, attacking the queen, and white simply cannot take that knight with pawn because the queen is behind it and the bishop is still pinned by the rook. The queen is forced to move and the knight can reach e4. After bishop f8, we see yet another brilliant move with a knight sack on f7. This is followed by knight g5 check and the superb move pawn g4, which kicks the black queen away. In the end, white wins with a fantastic checkmate. The next games look at what happens when black takes the gambit with their bishop. White will always take that bishop with knight, and black will almost always retake with their knight, because pawn takes knight would allow the dangerous move pawn e5. Once the knight recaptures, white has 2 options. One option is bishop g5. This is a move I often play, and the f6 knight is very awkward, and the move h6 is also a disaster for black. However, we will have to cover that another day, as Koltanowski always played pawn f4. This move attacks the center and also creates a threat against the knight outpost on d4. In this first game, black defends their center with the move d6 and then attacks the white queen with bishop g4. Eventually, black is able to play knight c2 and then capture the rook on h1. However, black is dangerously exposed. and has not yet castled. Over the next few moves, Koltanowski carefully opens the F file, which is commanded by his rook, and wins the game. In Game 4, Koltanowski again plays pawn to f4 to unsettle the knight on the outpost. Black makes an error and instantly retreats the knight. This turns out to be a big mistake, because white can sacrifice their bishop in this position. Bishop takes f7, and the white king is in trouble. Once the king takes, the move pawn takes e5 is immediately attacking a pin knight. And if you think the other knight can just grab that pawn and save its brother, think again. If that were to happen, then the move queen d5 could be played, because yes, the knight is still pinned and cannot move anywhere. So in the end, black chose the move knight e7, which in my opinion, does very little to help their cause. Koltanowski first takes the knight, and then throws piece after piece at the pawn on f6, which simply cannot move. The position is completely lost for black, and once Koltanowski gets queen to d5 with check, the end is near. In the next couple of moves, we see a comfortable checkmate for white. The final game shows another line where black takes the Koltanowski gambit with their bishop. Again, we see the move pawn f4 being played by Koltanowski. This time, the black player is more stubborn and manages to keep the center closed and fight back against the powerful light bishop. However, the move pawn f5 succeeds in kicking black's light squared bishop away, and then Koltanowski plays the move bishop g5, which as mentioned earlier, is a very effective pin on the knight. There are very few options for the black queen. Black does not have their own dark bishop to defend the knight. Their other knight is not able to defend it, and pushing the h-pawn is also problematic. The game continues with black castling short. Koltanowski wisely advances his pawns on the queen side to keep his opponent in a cramped position, and with so much space for his own pieces, he is able to perform a rook lift and begin an attack on the black king. From here, black plays the move pawn to h6, but this pawn cannot actually move to take the bishop, as white's rook is facing the black king. Over the next few moves, Koltanowski has to be very patient and slowly find the right moves. Although black is cramped, there are still many pawns in the way. Very careful placement of the rooks and bishops was required, and eventually Koltanowski got a bishop to h4 and was able to play pawn g5. This move breaks open the black defenses in the nick of time. First, bishop takes g5 comes with a tempo on the queen, and of course, the pawn still cannot touch the bishop. Next, the move pawn f6 appears to just lose a pawn, but Koltanowski has a clever plan. After pawn takes pawn, there is a bishop sack on the f6 square. Black retakes with knight, but this knight blocks the 6th rank and allows queen takes h6 with check. From here, the black king is forced to run. In the end, the king runs out of squares, and we witness a very cool bishop checkmate. So that is all for now. I hope you enjoyed this video about the blindfolded chess genius and his aggressive gambit in the bishop's opening. In the year 1937, in Edinburgh, Scotland, Koltanowski played 34 games of chess with a blindfold, winning 24 games and drawing the other 10 games. This broke the world record that had been set by the legendary Richard Reddy. In the 1930s, the title of Grandmaster did not yet exist, but Koltanowski was given an honorary Grandmaster title in the year 1988. I think it is safe to say that he would certainly have been a Grandmaster in the modern era, and probably in the top 100 players, but maybe you disagree. Please leave your opinions in the comments section, and thank you very much for watching.